Well, that's disappointing.
What would you do if a text popped up like that on your phone after you had just said no to someone? Would you panic, feel guilty? Would you backtrack and change your mind? For years, my biggest fear was disappointing people. And then recently, someone texted me those exact words. "That's disappointing," she said. In this video, I'll show you the people-pleasing trap that I almost fell back into when I got that text. Why this trap always leads to resentment. And the simple question that I'll be asking myself from now on, every time I feel obligated to say yes. Here's what happened. I dog sit for residual income, and I had a neighbor reach out to me asking me if I could watch her dog for a week. I've watched him before, but this time she alluded in the text that it would be a little bit different. I've watched Charlie at my house many times. It makes it easy, convenient, right? He's just at my home and I can do my normal routine. But this time she said she needed something a little bit different. I texted her back, asked what that was, and she said she needed drop-ins, 4 drop-ins a day. I texted again asking what that schedule looked like. And I'm starting to think 4 drop-ins a day, that's quite a bit of, even though she lives very close to me, it's still quite a bit of a commitment. So I'm starting to calculate in my head. She also said that he has changed. He's older now, of course. He's 15, he's mostly blind, and he's diabetic, so he would need insulin shots. That's another level completely, right? I had an amount in my head for what she would pay me or what I would want to be paid. And so I texted and said, "What is your budget?" versus just throwing out a number and then having to negotiate that number. And she came back with an amount that was a little bit less than half of what I had in my head. So now I have the facts. 28 trips over 7 days. Each trip is going to be about an hour in duration. 7 days committed to staying in my neighborhood because I'm going over there every 4 hours. So that doesn't leave me room to do much outside of my neighborhood, outside of my home. And I'm thinking 28 interruptions, 28 distractions over this week time period. And I feel myself starting to get anxious and already starting to feel a little bit frustrated and having the resentment already start building. And I haven't even, agreed to do it yet. I've noticed this pattern in me in the past as someone who feared disappointing people, upsetting people, is that I would start to ruminate about whatever it was, whatever the situation was. I would go back and forth in my mind. And that's what I recognized I started doing here a little bit. I wanted to be loyal. I wanted to say yes, but I realized a lot of it in the past, and this time it was coming up, that it was out of obligation, that I would give in rather than feel the guilt or the discomfort. Do you do this? Do you agree to things? And then afterwards just beat yourself up or feel so resentful toward the other person that you swear you will never do that again. But then the next time comes around, and because we haven't done the reps of saying no, we get in that discomfort again or the guilt, and we think that that is the reason that we're supposed to say yes, that the guilt means that we're doing something wrong by saying no. And so we would rather give in than feel that guilt or that discomfort or the fear, right, of what might happen, the fear of retaliation. And we end up ignoring our feelings and feeling responsible for theirs. And I recognize that I have a pattern of feeling obligated to say yes, to be loyal. And that is a people-pleasing trap, because then I say yes, and then I give up a little bit of discomfort for a lot of resentment and frustration and loss of inner peace, a lot of stress in the future. So I have this pattern of saying yes without considering the cost to me. I checked my calendar when she texted me and I had the days free. So that is where I used to go. If I had it free on my calendar, then I would say yes, just automatically. This time, because the texting was delayed back and forth between her and I, luckily, it gave me time to reflect and to think about what was happening, what was I committing to if I said yes. And so many times we don't think about future us, right? You don't think about future you and the resentment. You just want the short-term relief. And again, so you decide not to do the reps of saying no and sitting in the discomfort for a little bit. Instead, you skip the reps, you skip the gym, and you say yes to avoid possible disappointment, possible upset, possible retaliation. We just want, as people pleasers who have been taught to be this way, we just want that short-term relief. I also thought that it was wrong to say no, that I didn't have the right to say no. I was taught when I was young, right? Like, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And so I just learned to not speak up for myself. And part of that then meant not saying no, because it was not right to say no. Like I said, there was delays in her responding to my questions, which gave me time to think. It gave me time to pause. It gave me an excuse to pause and really think about what was I committing to if I said yes. I also caught myself, though, trying to negotiate in my head, like, how could I make this work? What did I need to do? Did I need to say yes, right? All these negotiations. I wanted to say yes, again, to avoid that guilt, to avoid the discomfort. And part of me just hoped that she would stop responding to my texts, to my questions, that she would ghost me. And then it hit me. I heard myself ask myself, would you feel relieved or disappointed if she canceled? If she texted and said she found someone else, would you feel relieved or disappointed? And it was this instant flush of relief throughout my body. I was completely relieved by that thought of her canceling. There was no disappointment because of the loss of money. There was no disappointment whatsoever. I also realized I thought that I was relieved by being off the hook for disappointing or upsetting her, which made me realize that I have this belief that someone else is keeping me on the hook, that their feelings hook me. So she controlled whether or not I was on the hook. And that's me giving away my power completely. I was taking on that how someone felt, that was on me, that was my responsibility, that was my responsibility to fix, because I felt like, or I believed that it was a problem that I caused, that their feelings, I had caused them by saying no and disappointing them. In that moment when I heard that question, I picked up my phone and I texted her and said, I decided this isn't going to work for me. I can't commit to doing this for a week. I do hope that you find somebody that can help you out. And I left it at that. And that's when I got back the text fairly quickly. That's disappointing. It was a little bit of a gut punch at first, just a little bit, but then I chuckled because I had already gone through this cycle and was aware of how much I gave up my peace, how much I created resentment in my life, resentment and frustration, by saying yes to things that didn't fit me, right? Just because it fit my calendar doesn't mean that it was the right decision to make. And so it made me laugh a little bit at my new awareness and how good it felt. But the past me would have felt guilty. I would have backpedaled. I would have felt bad because maybe this was my last time to watch him. He's old. He's not doing great. So I would have felt that sentimental pull and maybe said yes because of even just that sentimental value. So the old me would have probably figured out how to make it work. I would have just ignored the signs that I was getting and said yes. And at the least, if I had said no, I would have felt extremely guilty and wrong for disappointing her, for letting someone down. What I was doing in the past was trading someone else's disappointment for my resentment. This time, though, I let her feel disappointed. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. So yes, I was triggered a little bit, but in a different way. This time, I was an observer to the trigger. I wasn't living inside the trigger. When we live inside the trigger, there's nothing we can do about it. We feel out of control. We feel powerless to do anything. We just think that it's the way it is. This time I was aware that, okay, there is a trigger. There's a little trigger there. I'm aware of it, but her disappointment has nothing to do with me. And I had this realization that I was causing my own resentment by continuing to say yes to things. I was causing resentment. They weren't causing me the resentment. And I was super proud of myself for saying no, for realizing how far I've come in the last 8 to 10 years in dealing with this. But it's taken me that long of time. It's taken me doing the reps, sitting in the discomfort, letting them have their feelings, and moving forward anyway. The real freedom was seeing myself read her words, that's disappointing, without going into a tailspin, without apology, without negotiation. I just let them be words. And there is so much peace that comes from that when you can let go of the meaning that you think are in those words. I thought I was avoiding conflict and just being nice, but what I was really doing was trading someone else's disappointment for my resentment and then blaming it on them. Staying out of resentment is my responsibility. Just like their emotions, their disappointment, whatever they're dealing with is their responsibility, staying out of resentment is my responsibility. And to do that, I have to do the reps. I have to keep choosing me. I have to decide that it is worth a few minutes of discomfort in order to keep my own peace. That's the real freedom. And realizing that I am in all ways allowed to put myself first. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, physically, and so are you. This obviously isn't the first challenging situation where I wanted to say yes just to get rid of the fear of disappointment. And it won't be the last because requests are going to continue to come. We get requests to do things all the time. And avoiding the requests is not the answer to this. As I was sitting with that, the question came to me, will this fear of disappointing people ever go away? And I realized that it's not about the fear needing to go away. It's about becoming aware of how to work through that, how to work through it more smoothly so that you don't trigger your nervous system and your brain to go into fight or flight when you get those requests. And as I was thinking about this, I got a really cool insight that, again, the requests aren't going to go away, and the fear of disappointing people probably isn't going to go away, but I can stand outside of the trigger and observe it and respond according to that versus living in the trigger and responding from that place, reacting from that place. So I had this really cool insight that takes us through this cycle, which I visualize as this circle from the request and getting through that obligation phase in a smoother way so that you don't have the resentment. You don't say yes and then have the resentment at the end. I am building that model into a video that I will be putting into the membership that I have here on YouTube. I would love for you to be in the membership if that's something that calls to you. That's where I can support you with deeper dive videos. It's $6 a month, so you're also supporting me in doing this work. You can join for a month, you can stay for a year. It's all up to you. It's an invitation, not an obligation. You can click the join button below this video to get more information. And if you avoid conflict like the plague, you're gonna wanna watch that video right there. I appreciate you being here as always. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.